So throughout 2024, I was going over my top 6 games of each quarter, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Links to those are down below in the respective playlists of videos that feature those games. Well, we are at the end of the year. I've already done the fourth quarter, so time to look at all of 2024 and figure out which games were my top 12. That's right, it's the whole year, so let's double the list to 12. Alrighty, let's get to number 12 after the break. Before I get started with my number 12, I will say that beyond having all the 4-quarter playlists down there, I also have a playlist for the top 12 games of 2024 that I'll be covering in this here list. And it's in a playlist, all the videos we have done for them. Quite a few of these we've done the unboxings, the how to plays of solo play if it's got it, even reviewed some of these. So you'll be able to find all that info down below if it sparks your interest and you do want to see more things. So for my number 12, we are going to start with Inferno. We do have the deluxe edition. This comes to us from Red Mojo Games and released over here in the United States by Grand Gamers Guild. This is a game based on Dante's Inferno, where you'll be sending people to hell and then trying to move them to their respective layers to score points that way, moving up on some tracks for some endgame scoring, and a few various other things. This is a big, grandiose looking game. The deluxe version is fantastic with shaped meeples. They have little laser etched things in the middle to denote the type of sin for the level, metal coins, all of that deluxe options does add to this, but the gameplay itself is what really is fun. You're sending out workers to trigger certain effects, try and move up the tracks, and just trying to figure out what areas you're going to want to focus on to be able to get those points. The game also comes with various monsters that you'll be playing with 2 of each turn or each game, and those also will change kind of how you do things. There's one that lets you put a ring on a certain level, and then once a player scores something there, you will also score those points if it wasn't you. There's Medusa, who will turn souls to stone and kind of block past or maybe make it quicker to get down because you can just jump over filled spaces. So then also being able to try and line up those chain events to where you want to go. The other cool thing is that where the soul lands, that depicts where you're going to be taking your action. So it adds that whole level of planning and strategy of making sure you have enough areas and be able to go right where you want to go in order to be able to do the actions you want to do. Otherwise, you do have to pay money to take a different action, and you may not have it because money does take a few steps to really kind of build up to get where you want to go. So that is why Inferno is my number 12, is for all the cool decision space and the passive victory of choosing a different soul color or a different level color and various things like that. So number 12, Inferno. At number 11, we have a game from Board and Dice that is all about tulips and windmills, and that is Windmill Valley. I'm going to preface this by saying we probably play it a bit longer and with more actions than most people do, as we don't typically raise the water level to be able to spin our wheels more. We basically go through our wheels most of the time, so we do get to do a lot more, so that may increase our view on this game. In this game, you have these 2 wheels that will be turning, and then when they turn, 2 actions will be lined up, and you get to choose one of the actions. You can upgrade those actions. Some of them have plus symbols, which allows you to do both actions. As you do those actions, you may be able to trigger other actions. Like when you put out a windmill and you put it at the intersection, you're then able to trigger the fields around it and be able to do those actions. When you're doing these actions, you may also trigger some of the cards you have in front of you, which may then trigger even more actions. So there is a lot of big chaining combos in this game, because in my opinion, this is definitely one of those action optimization games where you want to try and do as much on your turn as possible, because turns are limited. Because once the wheels go all the way around, you move across on the calendar. Once you've moved across, I believe it's 1, 2, 3 times, then the game end is triggered. So you really want to try and upgrade your wheels so you can do more actions, have stuff that chains, be able to do both actions. And that is where, like I said, the way that we play is probably a little bit longer, more drawn out than others, because as you raise the water level, you spin your wheels more, so that and make the game end quicker as you're getting them around quicker than the other person. We just basically leave the water level there and just keep moving 1 and 1 so we can do as many actions and fill the board and just feel like this huge sense of accomplishment as we've scored tons of points. The production is really cool. The board is big. The board is colorful. You have the cool little wooden windmill tokens. But the gameplay, as I described, is really what drew us in. We both really love games where you can combo a bunch of stuff, where it really rewards you to focus on something. And this one does. Like, it rewards you on if you focus on being able to do a certain ability that triggers other things, then you can really kind of optimize your wheel to do that. Like, if you want to place out a lot of windmills, then you start replacing certain actions on your board with the windmills to be able to get those out. Because the more windmills you get, the better your points are going to be scoring for your different tulips. Then even putting tulips on your board triggers actions. So this is really just a game where a bunch of different stuff is able to get triggered. And that is why Windmill Valley is my number 11 of 2024. Number 10 comes to us from a company that we really enjoy for the way they're building out their world. They're releasing many games in the universe. They have released a graphic novel set in this universe. And that company is Thunderworks Games, and the game is Stone Spine Architects, one of the newer entries into their world of Ulos. This is a drafting game where you'll be drafting cards and placing them in rows. You'll be doing this over 4 rounds to build out your dungeon. Your dungeon's going to have different features like the type, either stone or dirt, I believe it is. You can have different creatures in it, different traps, because you're going to have a scoring card that optimally wants you to have certain things in certain spaces on your map. At the end, you are also then going to see if your dungeon connects to the entrance and to the exit, and you'll be scoring points for the cards as able to go from the entrance and the exit. So if you can get all the way through with all of the cards, you are going to score a lot of points. In addition to that, you'll be getting gold to try and buy at the market to be able to add extra tokens for those creatures, for those traps, maybe a secret door to be able to connect to different dungeon tiles that normally aren't able to. You'll also be getting gold cards throughout the game that you're going to try and get for end game points, and there's going to be a gold card for everyone to score at the end of the game. We are big fans of drafting games. We are big fans of trying to be able to do that little hitting goal with trying to choose where your card placement is and the whole little route building. And this one does that, and this one plays quick. Like I said, it plays over 4 rounds. You quickly draw, you draft, you put out, done, and move on to the next round. So this one plays quick. It has the deep thinking of where you're going to be placing the cards and how you want to get stuff for the certain gold cards. And as you're getting more gold cards throughout the game, you're hoping that you're going to be able to grab some that you've already started or trying to change midstream to be able to accomplish those gold cards. So we really enjoy, like I said, the fast play. The drafting is a huge element that we like. I want to say like almost half our list is drafting games. Seems like a lot of really good ones came out this year, and this is definitely one of them, which is why Stone Spine Architects is my number 10 for 2024. My number 9 game is the newest one that we've received that is on this list. We only received it like month and a half ago, and that is Snowcrest from Grail Games. In this one, you're going to be building a tableau of a 3x3 grid in front of you, and you'll be activating those cards as you place them down and then flipping them over. Once you have 3 in a row, column, or diagonally, you are then going to do a refresh action, which allows you to grab resources based on the backs of certain cards or on the front of the cards if they have the icon. You'll then get those resources, flip over all of your cards, and be able to go again. There's a board in the middle where you're going to be able to buy other cards or place the ones from your hand is how you fill up your tableau. There are certain areas that you can go and basically deal with creatures or guardians. Then those will get you points once you sacrifice certain things. You're going to have buildings that you can flip over to get the resources you need to take those actions or place out cards. You also can discard cards from your hand to use those resources to pick on that card to put out cards or trigger things, or even if you have the cards face up in your little grid, you can flip them over to use the resources up top. So that is one of the key things that really intrigued me about this game, is that ability that it's very hard to feel like you can't do anything because you do have so many options of different resources on your cards and being able to do this. And then even the 4 cards that you start with on the corners basically allow you to do everything. So as long as you keep those there, you will be able to do actions on your turn. And then that is one of the things with this is, again, optimizing those actions. The game does come to an end quickly, especially in a 2-player game, because when you meditate, normally you only get 1 victory point. When you meditate in a 2-player game, you get 2. You start out with a pool of 20 victory points, and that is the timer. There are some objectives out in the on the main board that once someone accomplishes those, they get 2 victory points, but those aren't necessarily going to be getting a ton of them. You want to focus more on defeating those guardians or doing those types of things. That's where you get a lot more of your victory points from. Even some of the cards you get in your tableau will end up giving you victory points if you can turn in certain things. At the end of the game, you're going to have your victory points. The person who has the most of each resource is going to get a victory point, and most points wins. So like I said, we really like the tableau building. Like trying to get those synergies of, all right, this card is going to give me the prayer bowls I need to be able to meditate with this card. There are certain cards that let you ignore some of the sacrifices you need to do on those other ones. So if you're going to go with that strategy, you want to make sure you get a couple of those so you're not having to sacrifice as much and you can keep doing that one without having to constantly replenish and get everything back. There's a special one with Juniper that there's only so many on the card. Once someone takes the last one, they have to deal with that guardian. And the cool thing about the guardians is they don't affect just you. They also affect your opponent. They have to try and sacrifice or do certain things as well. So, like I said, all of that with the card playing, the triggering, the chaining, to be able to figure out when's the best place time to refresh, building the 3x3 tableau in the best optimal way so you don't accidentally trigger a card and have to rest before you can use the stuff you can use, is why Snowcrest is my number 9 of this year. Number 8 on my list is a game in the world of Arzium, which means it comes from Red Raven Games, and that is Creature Caravan. In this game, you're going to be building out your caravan of creatures, and those creatures are going to allow you to be able to get more resources with the dice you need to roll. They're going to give you endgame scoring. They're going to give you abilities to play cards easier, or give you resources when you play cards. All the while you're doing this, you're going to be moving around on a map. You're going to be trying to get from start to finish by the end, and even if you don't get to the finish, you'll still score points. You just score more points the further you get, and especially if you can get to the end. So as I said, you're going to be rolling dice. You're going to use those dice to trigger the actions of beginning like breads and satchels and various things like that to be able to play cards. You also be able to turn certain things into the markets to be able to get points. And if you end up on a space where you get an Ember Zombie, you will be able to use certain things, the swords and combats, to then defeat them, which will have you move up on the zombie board, which will be end of game points as well. The main thing we like about this one is all of the various combos in the different cards. There's one that Bri constantly gets where it's, you can play magic cards for cheaper, and then this other one wants you to have magic cards to score points, or you get stuff with magic cards, so you can just constantly get this almost like small engine of playing out a magic card. Well, this magic card I was able to put out for 2 less bread, and now this one will trigger this, which means I can get this. Or, this one's going to be, a point or 2 points for every magic card, something to that effect. So being able to find those synergies throughout the game and get them going and working on your board is one of the keys to the game. And in so doing, you are able to, there's many different ways that allow you to just draw cards. And then if you want to get rid of your cards, you can always discard your cards for bread or various things like that. The other interesting thing about this one is the game flow it goes is at the beginning you don't feel like you can get out a lot of cards. Then as the game goes on, you realize you can start putting out all of this stuff, but you have a limit in your caravan of only 12 cards, so you don't want to start just putting any old thing out there because it's going to clog up the room. And outside of a couple of cards that allow you to discard those specific cards, there really is no way to get rid of cards in your caravan. There is one card that lets tiny cards not count towards your limit, but there is very few cards in the deck that will allow you to put out more cards. There is an expansion that adds where you're able to put these, I believe, relics or artifacts on certain cards based on type. That does add that cool element to where once you are done building your 12 cards, you are able to start still playing cards. So that does kind of accentuate or change the flow of the game to where, not much. You can put out a bunch of stuff, but you really want to kind of make sure what you're putting out is optimal. This one does kind of add it to where you can kind of, like I said, accentuate that, give them accessories, and where those last couple turns aren't feeling useless or wasted, or you just trying to get food to turn into the market because you've already put out your 12 cards. So that adds a really cool element. So the expansion is a really good addition in my opinion. And my opinion is that Creature Caravan was the number 8 game of 2024. Our number 7 game is the second entry from Grand Gamers Guild for this year, and that is Tir na Nog. They did just do a reprint and expansion campaign of this not too long ago, so we are looking forward to checking out that expansion when that comes in. But Tir na Nog is a drafting game. I believe they call it a saddle drafting game, where you're going to have a grid of cards out in the middle, and you're going to be going back and forth with your opponents, taking one of your workers and placing it between 2 cards. You then, when you take a worker back, you will draft one of those 2 cards, or only one if it's remaining, and you'll be putting it in one or into your hand. You're then going to be playing out a card in one of 3 rows. The way those 3 rows score at the end of the game is going to change from game to game, as you have different cards for each row, and you can randomly or choose which ones you want to do, but you have a new setup each game. So you may not always be wanting to grab the certain cards because they may not fit with your strategy. At the end of each turn, you're going to be discarding a card, so your hand is going to start dwindling, so you will have fewer options as you have fewer spots on your board. What I really like about this one is that those scoring options change, so that adds to that replayability. A lot of the cards have special abilities that will help move cards around, change colors, change numbers. Its number may change based on where it's at. So trying to grab those right cards and be able to get them placed at the right time with all that timing, the drafting, being able to choose when might be when you're going to be able to get that card. Or if you really want a card, make sure to lock both positions, but then you may have to grab a card you don't want. But that's fine because at the end of the turn you can discard it. So all those tense decisions throughout it of, what cards do I need? What cards do I think my opponent's going to take so I can maybe kind of hem them in there? Like if I know they want this card here, then I can put my person here. So that means they may take that sooner so I can grab the card I want. So almost like a pseudo, almost bluffing or type of element to there, where it's kind of like I know what you know and you know what you know, but do you know what I know you know type of thing about when you're going to grab certain things. So that again, and I can't forget, I really enjoy when there's able to be the Irish themes to games, because that is really what drew me in first to help me discover the gameplay. So again, my number 7 of 2024 is Tir na Nog from Grand Gamers Guild. So the first game in the top half of the list at number 6 is a game from Dranda Games with really cute artwork and a lot of interesting mechanisms, and that is Explorers of Novoria. In this game, it's played over 2 different phases. In the first phase, you are either going to draw 2 discs out of the bag or choose one of the discs that's in the village. You are going to then place that on a deck that allows you to draft one of the cards in that row, putting it in front of you. These cards are either going to give you goods that you're going to be placed on your board. They have to be divvied out between the different sections. They are going to allow you to place a trade post, I believe it is, on a certain section of the map, or it's going to allow you to move on the map. They will also have some endgame scoring or some end of round scoring options. In addition to that, they're going to have some clan symbols on them. When you get a certain number of clan symbols, you'll be able to put your little marker up for some endgame scoring. So in a 2-player game, you're going to be going back and forth drafting 4 cards. After everyone's drafted, you are then going to be taking turns taking one of the discs off of those decks and placing it on the map in the middle of the board. And these are going to do those same basic things, giving you goods, possibly allowing you to move on the map, giving you just straight points, etc. As you're placing goods on your little board over here, once a section gets filled up, you turn those in, and then you trigger that section of the board. It starts off with 2 things unlocked. As you put out more trading posts, it allows you to do more things. And these usually come between scoring points, moving on the map, etc. So what do I like about this one? A, the artwork is really cute, really cool, really enjoy that. The discs dictate what you're going to do in the second phase too. So when you're deciding between the 2 discs, you may take a card that is only okay, but it's better because you want to have that disc out there to be able to do something in the second phase. Being able to figure out when you want to trigger the orders or as you're getting them, because you have to trigger them right away, but like grabbing certain things to be able to maneuver a certain order. or focusing on one section of the map to be able to get all those trading posts out to fulfill that order to keep cycling through all those various things you can do. So that is like the main element. It has a really cool solo mode where it's going to be taking you through stories. I have started that. I will be finishing that out throughout the beginning part of this year. And just the expansion itself too adds a whole nother deck of cards that doesn't have clan symbols but have more powerful abilities. It also adds certain player powers, certain ways of starting the game. It can randomize the things you get at the end of each round for being furthest on the track. So the expansion itself also adds a lot of cool variability and replayability to the game. The expansion is also what adds the solo mode as well. So that is why Explorers of Navoria from Drenda Games is my number 6 of 2024. My number 5 game was very divisive when it came out at the beginning of the year. It also created a bunch of memes, and that is Wyrmspan from Stonemaier Games. This one shares the DNA of Wingspan, but with a dragon theme and some added different elements. So in Wyrmspan, you are going to be taking action on your turn. Your actions cost you silver coins, and then they can do various things, like you can draw cards, you can traverse through your cave, which has your person moving across, triggering certain things, you can play cards, you can hatch eggs, all of these various things. The dragons themselves have powers. Some of them are when played, some of them are game end, some of them are when that guy lands on them, etc. So, one of the main reasons I really like this game is I really like Wingspan. It was in my top 10 at one point. I haven't redone that in a while, but it's still up there. And I will say, depending on day, is whether I'd go Wingspan or Wyrmspan. They are very neck and neck with me. What sets Wyrmspan apart from Wingspan for me most times is those silver coins you use to do actions. You can get more of those as you play the game, so you are able to take more than just the 6 actions with the coins that you start off with. You can start, you can get them by going around the guild track. Those give you coins. Certain dragons will give you silver coins. So be able to have those extra actions to be able to do things is really cool. You don't just have dragons cards, you have to kind of excavate the cave and play these cave cards before you can play a dragon on those. And those cave cards can give you a lot of cool stuff as you're playing them. So it doesn't feel like just a mechanic just to do to be able to get out the dragon to do cool stuff. The card itself is doing something cool, then the dragon does something cool, and then that can help optimize you being able to go through the cave and be able to trigger those things. As you go through the caves more in one round, it does cost you more, and I believe it stops at 3, so you can't just have like one optimal cave and just keep running it and running it and running it, because it is going to start costing you more coins, and as I said, you are limited to the amount of times you can do that. So that does kind of make sure that you do spread it out between all 3 caves so you can trigger a lot of cool stuff as you're going on. The components are really nice. I personally really like the art. We weren't as big of a fan of the color scheme. It really did kind of darken it and made it a little bit more dreary. We do kind of like the bright, more colorful nature of Wingspan. Kind of prefer this to be a little bit more bright and colorful. But that would really be my only main gripe with it. I really like that. It came with a book that had fun facts about all the different dragons. So just kind of that really cool touch and element to kind of elevate the game beyond just, everyone being like, it's a reskin of Wingspan. It's not, because it adds, as I said, those various different elements with that. There's hatchling cards that do certain things as those go on. The whole way that the person moves across the board is from left to right, not right to left, and there's different spots that it triggers. So that is why Wyrmspan is my number 5 of 2024. My number 4 kind of shares a similarity to my number 5, and that is that this is a redone version of an older game. This is Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux by Garphill Games. This one, he redid Shipwrights of the North Sea, changed up some mechanics. We've never played the original Shipwrights, but we did hear that this has quite a few changes and made better for, I believe, a 2-player experience, as we are wont to play. So again, this is a drafting game. This is going to be a game where you're going to be going through, drafting your hand, and then simultaneously everyone's going to be playing the cards from their hand. You can play, or ships go up. You have to basically fund the ship by spending all the resources and stuff needed. The ship then goes out, and some of those give you ability, end of game scoring, various things like that. You can play villagers into your board. You'll be using them for their symbols to help put out those boats. There are certain buildings that you can put out that has worker placement spots, and then those buildings have a couple different things that you can place under them to enhance their worker placement ability. In addition to that, you can discard the cards for the resources, and there's a couple other different things. At the end of each round, you're going to see who's moved further on to certain tracks. You'll then get a hero that'll allow you to do certain other things on your turn. This game plays pretty quick because the drafting is simultaneous, the turns are simultaneous. There's only, I can't remember how many turns, somewhere between 5 and 7, maybe 6, maybe more, maybe less. But there's not many turns. So as with the simultaneous play, not many turns, you are going quick back and forth, and throughout the rounds. And because there aren't many rounds and you're only drafting those cards, it does make it where you are really having to think about the cards you take. Make sure you have the resources to be able to put out those ships. Moving up on those reputation tracks allow you to do more things up there. Your workers. At some point, your workers are just going to go away, so making sure you replenish your workers because you do have to spend them sometimes as resources in essence. So you aren't able to just keep putting them out and bringing them all back. You're spending them, so you have to make sure you bring them back because they're needed a lot of times for those ships or to trigger certain things that you want to do down on your board to help you get the resources to be able to put out those ships. So really just that balancing act of what are you going to grab to be able to put out the ships, to make sure you have the workers, and trying to keep track of all the resources in your head, as well as those symbols down here on your citizens, so you can have those symbols that you need to put out those ships. So it is like a tight balancing act and a lot of resource management thinking about in your head or various things like that. And that is why Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux is number 4 on my 2024. Continuing the trend of a game, following a game, and sharing some DNA, my number 3 shares some DNA from a game from the publisher of my number 4 game. And that is Forges of Ravenshire from BA Games. It shares some DNA with Raiders of the North Sea. So if you play that, it's you put out a die, you get some stuff, you take a die, you get some stuff. That is how Forges of Ravenshire plays. And the stuff you are getting and doing is you are going to be getting certain resources that are going to help you craft weapons. You might be getting tiles because you put the tiles on your board, because not only do you get stuff when you take that die back, you place it on your board and you run this engine you have down in that color, which gets you resources or relics or various things like that that you're going to be using to make, again, those weapons, armor, shields, etc. Because after everyone has put out 3 dice and taken 3 dice, you then go into the second one, which is where you are going to be creating those weapons, where you can start manipulating your materials over here. Certain materials you can combine to be able to make the harder to get materials that you will need to build those weapons. You can also use the relics to make them, like, I think it's like Ember Fire or Mithril, and those are going to score you more points or more gold, and you'll need those possibly for the goals that you can get throughout the game. So you're going to be managing all that. They come with assistant cards. Some of those assistants will give you an extra die, or one will unlock all of your special things on your board, so you're not having to use your build tokens to do that. You start out with that so you can start getting more orders. One might make orders better, especially if you focus on a certain type of Ember or Mithril, etc. So the main reason this is number 3 is we really like Raiders of the North Sea. We like that whole take a die, or place a die, get a bunch of resources. Brian and I both like the whole collecting resources, turn those resources into things, and those things get you points. And this does a lot of that because, the dice value dictates how much stuff you get. So trying to mitigate and manage where am I going to put that die, and then what am I going to bring back to get as many resources or relics that I can to be able to make the stuff I need to do. Then managing your whole little tableau over here of making sure you have enough resources to turn in to get what you need, but also to still make it. Like, you'll have to turn in wood and I think it's coal or something to make the one resource. Well, you need to make sure you leave enough wood though, because the item will also need wood. So it's like a whole little like optimization puzzle over here after you've done the whole almost like worker placement with the dice manipulation over here. So that is why Forges of Ravenshire is my number 3. My number 2 comes to us from Bad Comic Games, and I believe this stops the whole shares DNA with the previous game. This is Wondrous Creatures. This is a game that is worker placement. You're placing them on a board. Once you place them out, you're going to look all around them. They take up 2 spaces, and for every one that they touch that shows an icon on it, you either can get that resource or grab a card from the display that matches that icon. So you're going to be trying to get these resources, be able to place these cards out from your hand, and when you place them out, they can either be triggering when they're played, they might be triggered when you rest, they might have energy tokens on them, which you can remove them to then remove energy to then trigger their ability. So you're going to be building this whole tableau over here. You have a captain that eventually will get unlocked, and you'll place them on one of your meeples, and that will now have a special captain ability that will trigger at certain times as you play them, or throughout the game, or something to there. You're going to be doing a lot of this to fulfill goals that are on the board, which a lot of times just have so many cards, or 4 of them are based on the species of the cards you are playing. You're going to have so many, and then once you get that, you'll get the trophy, but you'll also be able to take this little marker off of your board, put it over there, and that will trigger something to happen. So not only are you going to be getting the points and the trophy, you are also going to be getting to trigger something on your board as well. So there's a lot in this game that I really like. There's a whole worker placement mechanic of being able to trigger a bunch of spaces when you place your person. There's nets that allow you to be able to trigger stuff that are on some of those spaces and trigger even more actions. The wide variety of abilities on the different animal cards help trigger certain things, and you can try and maybe find some synergies there. This has like a Pokemon element to it where you will have like one creature and it can slowly evolve. So they have the same power, it just will be slightly different or slightly better the more it gets. Trying to manage getting those resources and still getting the cards. And then when you rest, you have to discard down to a hand limit that's set typically at a regular number, but then as you get more things or unlock certain abilities, you can unlock a greater hand limit. The fact that when your action is to play a card, you play 2 cards, so it doesn't feel like, all right, I just played 1. No, you can play 1 that triggers something that helps get you stuff, and then you can use that stuff to play the second card. So being able to kind of manage when you want to play those cards and build up. The worker spaces obviously are only limited to 1 person, but when they rest, they all come back. So maybe you need to try and bide some time until that person rests and bring them back. Or maybe you're going to get all of your people out there to block the spaces and get all the stuff you need, and then you can do a bunch of stuff and hog those 3 really good spots so your opponent can't get out there. So the whole different ways of playing. You can go with a bunch of stuff for resting. So when you rest, you get a bunch of stuff to then try and do things. You can build up your whole end of game cards. So just all the different avenues of victory. The meeples themselves are really cool looking animals. The artwork is fantastic looking. So just all those different cool mechanisms, mechanics shoved into one is really what set Wondrous Creatures apart for me and makes it my number 2 of 2024. And here we are, number 1 on my list of top games from 2024. This one arrived early this year, and it has stuck with us throughout the year to stay at the number 1 spot, and that is Let's Go to Japan from Alderac AEG. This is a game where, again, you'll be drafting. You'll be drafting cards that are either in Tokyo or Kyoto, and you're going to be building out a 6-day vacation, placing cards in the columns. The columns are going to have symbols on it. Depending on how many symbols you have, when you complete your day of 3 cards, you'll be able to get certain bonuses or different little tokens that do various things, such as being a wild token to help move on tracks. Once each person has filled up their 6 days, they are then going to be going left to right, top to bottom, triggering it, moving their little discs on their track, and then their 3rd card down, they're going to score that bottom if they meet the criteria at that time. So this is a game that really rewards you for trying to plan ahead, knowing what cards need what, and then trying to make sure you lay out your cards to move those tracks over as it goes down. So you can't just be looking like, yeah, at some point I'm going to have 6 of the symbols, so this card's going to trigger. No, if you don't have those 6 symbols, by the time you get to that card, it's not going to work. So it's a small little almost programming element where you need to make sure that stuff triggers down the line to be able to work for something. There's a whole little track for happiness that if you can get a good deal or if something makes you happy, you move over. If something's expensive or tires you out, it moves over, and try and manage that track because as it moves left and right, if it gets to the end, it'll give you bonus points. If it gets to the end on the other side, it'll give you negative points. So just try and be able to manipulate that track as well. You can't just do all this cool, expensive stuff because it will be giving you negative points at the end if you haven't moved it. When you have to go between cities, you need to place trains. If you don't have a train to place, you have to take one, and that's going to give you negative points. So being able to try and optimize going from city to city so you're not bouncing all around and need to get all these trains, because the main way of getting the trains is by getting, I believe it's 3 symbols in that day. So instead of being able to take a train, you can do other stuff. But if you're going from city to city, you have to keep grabbing all the different trains. So that makes it less things you can grab as you're completing those days. So really kind of managing how you're going to spread out your trip and try and maybe keep centralized and maybe move once or twice because you do start with 1 train. So like I said, this one just, it grabbed us at the beginning. I know Bri was indifferent on the theme. I liked the theme. I liked the story behind it. And the artwork is great. And it was really the game mechanics that drew her in. And then she warmed up to the theme and being able to read all the stuff on the cards and just all the care and it was taken for this game. We do have the deluxe version, which means we have some wood bits, we have some bags, certain things like that. We also sprung for the cool ceramic bowls. But this is a game that shines on gameplay itself and doesn't even need those fancy bits and bobs, in my opinion, because it is all about the drafting, the laying out, and the managing your tableau in front of you. So let's go to Japan, my number 1 of 2024. I can get you to head down below. Hit like, subscribe, comment, share, ring the bell. Maybe leave that comment of what was your favorite game from 2024, or if one of these games that I have mentioned of these 12 really struck a chord with you as well. While you're down there, you could also please help support the channel by either going to our Patreon and subscribing, or hitting up our Ko-fi and doing a one-time donation to buy me a drink to where we can toast to my top 12 of 2024. So, thank you for watching, and here's to a wonderful 2025 of games.